They came from the cold, silent voids between galaxies, beings of immense power and crystalline logic. They called themselves the Archons, and they saw themselves as cosmic gardeners, pruning the unruly branches of galactic civilizations. And humanity, in their ancient, unwavering gaze, was a weed, a vibrant, chaotic, dangerously unpredictable species whose history was a litany of bloody triumphs and catastrophic failures, a story they deemed unfit for the ordered tapestry of the cosmos. Their solution was as elegant as it was terrifying: to erase our history, to sever us from our past, to reduce us to a blank slate, malleable and manageable. They believed that by culling our memories, by excising the very narratives that defined us, they could pacify us, neuter our ambition, and guide our evolution down a path of their choosing. This is the story of their monumental arrogance, their fatal miscalculation. This is the story of how aliens tried to erase our history and accidentally unleashed our ancestors' power. They didn't come with fleets of warships blazing. Their invasion was quieter, more insidious, a virus in the data streams, a whisper in the subconscious. The Archons, masters of neuro-linguistic programming on a planetary scale and genetic recoding so subtle it initially went unnoticed, began their work with chilling precision. Across the burgeoning human colonies, from the terraformed plains of Mars to the fledgling outposts in the Alpha Centauri system, the great unknowing began. Libraries, digital and physical, turned to static and dust. Historical archives corrupted, their data transforming into meaningless noise. Educational institutions found their curricula hollowed out, the stories of humanity's struggles, its heroes, its villains, its pivotal discoveries, all gone. Imagine waking up one morning, the grand narrative of your species simply absent. No tales of exploration, no sagas of empires rising and falling, no records of the brutal lessons learned in the crucible of survival. Only a present, disconnected and sterile, and a future dictated by the benevolent, omnipresent Archons who offered guidance, order, and a disturbingly placid existence. They targeted the very neural pathways where long-term cultural memory resided. They introduced retroviruses designed to suppress specific genetic markers associated with what they termed legacy aggression and narrative path dependency, in plain language, our tendency to learn from and be driven by our past. They wanted a humanity stripped of its burdens, but also, crucially, stripped of its fire, its hard-won wisdom, its ingrained resilience. They saw our history as a chain, and they sought to break it. For a generation, it seemed they had succeeded. Humanity became more docile, less inquisitive about the before time. The old stories faded into myth, then into nothing. We became a species adrift, our societal anchors pulled up by an unseen hand. The Archons observed, and in their cold, analytical way, they were pleased. The human problem, as it was known in their silent councils, was being solved. The wild, unpredictable variable was being brought under control. This was their first mistake, believing that history is merely what is written, what is remembered in conscious thought. They underestimated the depth of our roots, the power encoded not just in our minds, but in our very blood, our bones, our DNA, the silent, unyielding legacy of every ancestor who fought, survived, adapted, and overcame. The Archons, in their hubris, believed they were dealing with a surface phenomenon. They sought to erase the software of our culture, but they failed to comprehend the ancient, unyielding hardware of our being, a biological and perhaps even metaphysical inheritance forged over millennia of struggle. The ancestors' power wasn't a story in a book. It was the sum total of every desperate fight for survival, every adaptation to a hostile environment, every leap of intuition that allowed our forebears to endure. It was the ferocious will to exist, to persist, to become, etched into our genetic code. The accident, the beautiful, catastrophic error in their calculations was this. By attempting to suppress the conscious, recorded history, by dampening the neural pathways of explicit memory and cultural transmission, they inadvertently created a vacuum. Nature and human nature abhors a vacuum. With the noise of more recent, complex, and often contradictory historical narratives silenced, something far older, far more primal began to stir. Their sophisticated tools of erasure, designed to sever connections to learned behaviors and cultural legacies, acted like a filter, stripping away the superficial and leaving the raw, unadulterated core of human potential exposed. It began subtly. On isolated frontier worlds, far from the Archons' direct oversight, human colonists faced with sudden, unexpected environmental crises, solar flares, alien megafauna migrations, geological upheavals, began to exhibit an almost uncanny adaptability. They weren't drawing on learned historical solutions. Those were gone. Instead, they were innovating, cooperating, and enduring with a ferocity and instinctual correctness that baffled the Archon observers monitoring from afar. It was as if dormant genetic traits, survival mechanisms honed in the ice ages or the primordial savannas of old Earth, were reawakening. Consider the settlers on Xylos, a jungle moon deemed pacified and historically cleansed. When a planet-wide symbiotic fungus, previously benign, turned hostile due to unforeseen stellar radiation, the colonists didn't collapse into chaos as predicted by Archon models of historically naive populations. Instead, small, isolated groups, with no prior knowledge of large-scale agriculture or complex bioengineering, began to intuitively identify edible, non-infected flora. They developed rudimentary but effective quarantine protocols almost overnight. Children, who should have been the most vulnerable, displayed an eerie calm and followed instinctual patterns of safety. The Archon analysts flagged it as an anomaly. Then another anomaly occurred on a mining colony in the Kepler system, where engineers, faced with a catastrophic failure of their Archon-supplied life support, jury-rigged a solution using abandoned, pre-contact human technology they shouldn't have even recognized, let alone understood how to operate. Their hands moved with a surety that transcended mere training. It was an echo of ancient ingenuity. This ancestor's power wasn't a magical force. It was the re-emergence of deeply embedded traits, radical adaptability, ferocious resilience, an unshakable instinct for problem-solving, and a profound, almost cellular capacity for cooperation when faced with existential threat. The Archons had tried to prune the branches, but in doing so they had driven the roots deeper, forcing the tree of humanity to draw sustenance from its most ancient, most potent soil. They had sought to erase our story, and instead, they had forced us to tap into the very essence of what made us capable of having a story in the first place. The Archons' reports grew more frantic. Their predictive models, based on a sanitized humanity, were failing catastrophically. The humans weren't just surviving, they were evolving, adapting at an accelerated rate. The genetic markers they had tried to suppress, those linked to rapid learning, intuitive leaps, and even certain forms of psychic resonance that facilitated group cohesion under pressure, weren't just reactivated, they were hyper-expressing. It was as if the attempt at suppression had acted like a coiled spring, now released with explosive force. One of their chief xenogeneticists, a being known as Silo 7, in a now infamous secret communique, wrote, "We sought to unmake their history to free them from its perceived burdens. Instead, we have severed them from the superficial and reconnected them to the foundational. Their conscious memory of past glories and failures is diminished, yes, but their inherent capacity, the raw genetic and mimetic potential forged in their species' violent crucible, has been amplified. We believed their strength lay in what they remembered. We were wrong. Their true strength lies in what they are, in the unbreakable chain of biological imperative and emergent complexity. We tried to make them sheep, and we have instead awakened something akin to a dormant dragon. The Archons had made the classic blunder of the arrogant intellectual. They confused knowledge with wisdom, data with understanding, control with genuine influence. They saw human history as a collection of errors and dangerous precedents. They failed to see it as the training ground, the brutal, beautiful forge that shaped the very qualities now re-emerging with such terrifying potency. They tried to create a predictable, manageable species, and in their attempt to smooth out the flaws, they had polished a mirror that now reflected their own profound ignorance. The true irony was that the ancestors' power wasn't about returning to some primitive state. It was about accessing the full spectrum of human capability, the primal instincts now fused with the intellect and potential that had always been there, just beneath the surface, beneath the weight of more recent, complex, and sometimes self-defeating historical narratives. The Archons, in their misguided attempt at cosmic housekeeping, had inadvertently performed a planetary-scale reset, clearing away the clutter and allowing the fundamental, unshakable core of human potential to blaze forth. They had tried to erase our history, and in doing so, they had revealed our destiny. To be a force of nature, untamable, ever-evolving, drawing strength from the deepest wells of our being. They had shown us that our greatest power wasn't in the libraries they burned, but in the fire that burned within us, a fire lit by countless generations who refused to break. So what does this galactic drama, this tale of alien miscalculation and human resurgence, mean for you here now? You may not be facing down pangalactic Archons intent on wiping your historical drive. But every single day you face forces that seek to diminish you, to control your narrative, to tell you who you are, what you're capable of, and what your limits are. Society, your upbringing, your own negative self-talk, past failures, these can all act like the Archon's subtle erasure, attempting to chip away at your authentic power, to disconnect you from your inherent strength. The lesson from this cosmic blunder is stark and empowering. Your true power, your ancestors' power, isn't something that can be given or taken away by external forces. It resides within you, encoded in your very essence, a legacy of resilience, adaptability, and the unyielding will to overcome. Recognize your unwritten history, the bedrock of your being. The Archons focused on recorded history, on tangible data. They missed the intangible, the unwritten saga of your personal lineage and the collective human experience. You are the culmination of survivors. Every ancestor you have, stretching back into the mists of time, overcame unimaginable odds just to pass on the spark of life. That struggle, that resilience, that sheer tenacity is not just a story. It's a biological and spiritual inheritance. When you feel weak, when you feel like circumstances are erasing your progress, remember this. The capacity to endure and adapt is hardwired into you. Your personal history, with all its scars and triumphs, is not a burden. It's a testament to your strength. The setbacks are not erasures. They are stress tests that have revealed and forged your inner steel. Don't let anyone, not even yourself, convince you that your past defines your limits. It defines your foundation, and that foundation is built on the bedrock of survivors. The Archons sought to make humanity forget its struggles, believing this would make them docile. They were fools. Our struggles are the source of our deepest power. Embrace yours. The void as a canvas. When external narratives collapse, your truth emerges. The Archon's erasure created a void, a terrifying emptiness for a time. But in that void, something new, something more authentic began to grow. When the world tries to strip away your identity, when your plans crumble, when the narratives you've built your life around are challenged or destroyed, it can feel like annihilation. But see it for what it can be, an opportunity, a clearing. The Stoics understood this profoundly. We cannot control external events, but we can control our internal response. When the external scaffolding is removed, you are forced to rely on your internal structure. This is where your ancestors' power, your core resilience, your intuition, your fundamental drive has the space to manifest. Don't fear the stripping away of the superficial. Don't fear the moments when you feel you've lost your way or your story. It is often in these voids that your truest self, unburdened by external expectation or self-imposed limitation, can finally step forward and paint a new, more powerful reality. The Archons wanted to fill the void with their own design. You must fill it with yours. Embrace the primal drive, the unquenchable fire within. The Archons tried to suppress what they called legacy aggression and narrative path dependency. They wanted to extinguish the fire, the drive, the hunger that propelled humanity. This is the same fire that critics, doubters, and your own fears try to dampen within you. That primal drive for survival, for significance, for growth, for creation, that is not something to be ashamed of or suppressed. It is the engine of your potential. It's the unrefined core of your ancestors' power. It's the grit that gets you through the impossible. It's the stubborn refusal to stay down. Society often tries to sand down these inconvenient edges to make you more compliant, more predictable. The Archons learned the hard way. You cannot extinguish the fundamental drive of a sentient species to be. Stop apologizing for your ambition. Stop tempering your fire to make others comfortable. That primal energy, refined by discipline and directed by wisdom, is your greatest asset. It's the core of your resilience, the wellspring of your ingenuity. The power of accidental catalysts, turning suppression into supercharge. The Archons' attempt to erase history accidentally unleashed something far greater. This is a profound truth. Often, the very attempts to break you, to limit you, to hold you back, can become the catalysts for your most significant breakthroughs. Think of the immense pressure that creates a diamond. Think of the muscle torn down in the gym, only to rebuild stronger. When you face adversity, when you encounter resistance, when others try to put you in a box or tell you no, don't just see it as an obstacle. See it as an Archon's miscalculation. See it as a potential trigger for your dormant strength. The energy they expend trying to suppress you can be fuel for your defiance, not a loud, theatrical defiance, but the quiet, undeniable defiance of outperforming, out-adapting, and outlasting their negativity. Their underestimation of you is their fatal flaw and your hidden advantage. Every time someone doubts you, every time a plan fails, ask yourself, how can this erasure attempt on my current path accidentally unleash a deeper power I haven't yet tapped? Strategic defiance, live your unwritten power. The humans in our story didn't defeat the Archons through grand declarations or open warfare, not initially. They defeated the Archons' plan by simply being more than the Archons could comprehend. Their power emerged organically, an undeniable fact that shattered the aliens' paradigm. Your most potent form of defiance against the limitations imposed by the world or your own mind isn't always aggressive confrontation. It's living from your core strength. It's embodying resilience. It's demonstrating adaptability. It's achieving your goals despite the erasures and setbacks. It's building your inner citadel so strong that no external force can truly shake your foundation. The Archons couldn't control what they couldn't understand. Become so rooted in your authentic, ancestral power that you become an unpredictable, undeniable force in your own life. Let your actions, your achievements, Your unwavering spirit be the evidence that their attempts to define or diminish you have utterly failed, and in fact, have made you stronger. The Archons made a fatal assumption. They assumed that by controlling the narrative, they could control the being. They were wrong. Humanity's strength wasn't in the stories it told itself, but in the enduring spirit that allowed it to survive and tell stories in the first place. That spirit, that ancestors' power, is your birthright. It's the relentless evolutionary pressure that forged you. It's the distilled wisdom of eons of survival, encoded in your very cells. They tried to erase our history and accidentally showed us where our true, unassailable power lies. Not in the past we remember, but in the ancient, unbreakable core of who we are. Not in the knowledge we accumulate, but in the resilience we embody. Not in the structures we build, but in the spirit that animates us. So look at your life. Where have the Archons, be they people, circumstances, or your own inner critic, tried to erase your potential, diminish your story, or dictate your limits? Understand this. Their efforts are futile if you refuse to let them define you. Their attempts to break you are merely opportunities to awaken a strength you didn't know you possessed, a strength inherited from a long line of those who refuse to yield. Stop looking outside for validation or permission. The power you seek is already within you. It's been there all along, waiting. The erasure is just an invitation to dig deeper, to connect with that primal, ancestral fire. It's a call to shed the superficial and embrace the essential. The greatest mistake the Archons made was not understanding that the human spirit, much like the universe itself, is always expanding, always evolving, and ultimately cannot be contained or erased. It can only be temporarily misunderstood. Don't let your own power be misunderstood by yourself any longer. Claim it. Wield it. Become the living proof that what is essential within you cannot be destroyed, only perhaps accidentally, monumentally unleashed. Go forth and let that ancestral power reshape your world. The universe is waiting to see what you do with it.